We're lucky enough to be joined now by the legendary Bill Reed, the director of events here at the University of Portland, who is calling it quits after a 34-year career at UP. Bill Reed, you've been here for a long time. What are some emotions that are going through you right now? Excitement, sadness, both? What are you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling there's a definite sadness going through me. It's very controllable, but it definitely is sadness, leaving a place that I've sort of become ingrained with, and they've become ingrained with me. But I leave back a legacy. I believe that's a positive legacy. I have some things in place that I think will carry on. So I feel very comfortable and confident that that's going to happen. But the other side of the coin is everybody keeps saying, Bill, this is your last this, last that, last this. But realize I have all these firsts that I'm going to be able to do. So I have a lot of firsts coming up that I'm looking forward to.
And let's talk about those retirement plans real quick. What's on the horizon for you?
Well, we just got a phone call from the brother-in-law, Tom O'Malley, who graduated from the University of Portland. And he and his lovely wife are retiring, Sue, are retiring this year in December, and they said we need to go on a cruise. So we might go on a cruise with them. Length of time, Lord knows, but they're talking someplace down by Australia and New Zealand. So it's going to take a long time to get there and a long time to get back.
Nice. Sounds like fun. So you have worked with athletics, but your responsibilities extend all over campus.
They do.
I'm sure you've created some memories or had some highlights during your 34 years here. What are some of the highlights, non-athletic, that stand out for you?
Well, the opportunity of spending time with some of the guest speakers that came into the university. The first major guest speaker we had was Stephen Hawking. And I knew of Stephen by just what was on TV. But all of a sudden now I had the opportunity, he comes down the hallway in Zone 9, back off the loading dock there. And here he comes, and he paused, and through his synthetic voice, he said hi. And I asked him why. I said hi back. He said, I'm glad to be here. I said, we're glad you're here also. And then he went on. And I was just very blessed to have spent just a short little period of time with Stephen Hawking. And the other highlight would have been the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama came twice. Each time he did 2 to 3 teachings, and had the opportunity of meeting him one-on-one. And a very peaceful man, but also a very jovial man. He could love to laugh, and he's not one of these shallow laughers. He's a very deep laugher. So those are the 2 people I've met that have really highlighted and left an impression. I can go on and on about many others, but those are the 2.
Let's rewind it back even farther. Your student days here at UP.
Student days at UP.
What do you remember about those days? I know it's a long time ago, but what do you remember about being a student at the University of Portland?
UP for me was the love of my life, literally, because I fell in love with a lovely young lady named Suzanne O'Malley. So on my first trip onto campus, I was visiting from St. Martin's because my first freshman year was at St. Martin's. I came down every weekend because St. Martin's social life was pretty nil, and 4 guys I went to high school with were going to school here. So we came down to visit them, and as visiting them, one time I'm sitting across from at the dining room table in the Commons, and there was this lovely girl who sat down, and people introduced her as Suzanne O'Malley, and next night was just before Christmas break, and next thing you know, she lives in Concord. I live in Albany, California, and next thing you know, I'm taking her out during Christmas break and decided I better go back to the University of Portland. Let's go back to St. Martin. So started at UP and went into education and really enjoyed it. Lived in, I don't know how lengthy you want to get in this, but I can keep on going and going. But.
Well, I'm sure campus looks a little bit different these days. Talk about some of the differences between then and now.
Well, in those days, Howard Hall was the center, was the mecca of campus. You had to go there to do pretty much anything athletic. We had the opportunity of seeing some great basketball games in that place, but also working out, also playing intramurals. So it was sort of the center. And that's also where all the athletic offices were for years and years. So that has changed. It's gone. That's a real big change. It's absolutely not here anymore, and they're building a new building in its place. The Dundon Berkdale building will take its place. The other major thing was walking across campus. BC, or Buckley Center, was brand new, spanking brand new. So you walked across campus, and there was this new building in your way. And you had to kind of walk around it. For some people, that was kind of inconvenient because you used to be able to cut right across. Now you got to walk around a big building. And the campus was just smaller. There's only a little less than 1,000 of us on campus, so you already knew everybody. Mm-hmm. Now you come to campus, and we still know many people, but not everybody.
And you mentioned athletics. You've had a lot to do with that athletics through the years. I'm sure there's been some highlights, some good memories for you. Talk about some of those. I'm sure beating Oregon State back at Memorial Coliseum
Right.
was one of them, and the two soccer national championships
Right.
have
Those
to be
are-
up there for you.
Yeah, the Oregon State game with Ralph Miller as the coach and Jack Avina still in, I think, his third year. I could be wrong there, but right near his beginning of his career. And going to the Coliseum and beating them on neutral court in a sense, but really our home gym, in front of national people and national, I think it was national TV if I remember correctly. It was just a phenomenal victory. I mean, we literally rushed the court, and there was enough of us to make enough people down there to look like we're rushing the court as opposed to 20. This was hundreds and hundreds of people coming back for that game. So, and it's an exciting ball game. And then the two national championships, what can you say? Those were just book stories that I'll never ever forget. And spending time with those young ladies and watching them succeed was so exciting. And also the first one with Clive, his first and his last, but seeing Clive in that situation and watching him, the tears and the happiness and the hug from his lovely wife, it just really brought back chills for me every time I think of that.
Now, last Friday night, another maybe chills-inducing moment. You threw the first pitch
I
at
did.
Joe Etzel Field before the
I did.
Pilots game against San Diego.
Yeah,
Walk us through that. I'm sure it was an honor for you.
it was an honor for me.
And did Joe Etzel give you a few tips?
Right. So I'm looking at myself on Friday. This is Thursday. Friday. All of a sudden, about 2 o'clock, I go, I better have some idea about what I'm doing here. So I phoned Joe up. I said, Joe, I'm going to throw the first pitch out. Would you mind at least warming me up a little bit? He said, Bill, I'd love to. So he came out early. We went to the bullpen. Matthew, his grandson, caught me. And Joe gave me a couple of things. He said, Joe's first thing, he said, Bill, everybody who throws their first pitch, they all face with their two legs facing the catcher. You should turn sideways like a real pitcher and pitch. And then he said, it's around the house, just throw it like your big circle. And I did 10 or 12 with them, and I got it over about 6 times, 7 times.
50%, not
Yeah,
bad.
not bad. And then I walked out there, and Matthew said, Bill, just throw it like you threw it the 6 good times. And I did, and I got it over. It was kind of a drop ball. It kind of floated and dropped right in.
Fell right off the table.
Fell right off the table, boy. I think the guy would have struck out, but who knows?
And you mentioned Joe Etzel. I'm sure he's one of the many people you've encountered here at UP that have
Right.
meant a lot to you. We're going to go through some of those people. Let's start with Joe.
Yeah.
You actually go way back with Joe, don't
I
you?
go way back with Joe. In my sophomore year in college, I was pledging a fraternity, Sigma Tau Omega, and I needed to have a project. There was 3 of us in our pledge class. We needed to have a project that we could do as 3, but we had to stay on campus because none of us had cars. So somebody said, I think the lockers in Howard Hall downstairs needed some painting. So they all looked at me and said, well, Bill, why don't you go up and talk to Mr. Etzel? And I think they chose me because I was the tallest, and I would be tall with Joe. So,
People were shorter back then. so.
much more, yeah. So I went into his office, and Gail, his secretary, who was the secretary for many, many, many years, Gail Poff, she was sitting there, and I'm here to see Mr. Etzel, still Mr. Etzel, and walked into his office, and I said, I would like to, why? I said, well, I want to do this, I got to do this for this project. So what color? Well, we're going to paint it gray. Good. Like 4 words, maybe 5. That was it. Walked out, and I had a contract. I'm going, gee whiz, Then I meet him years and years later. We started working hand in hand. I had my office space in his building, the Child Center, and we became very good friends. We are still good friends. We became pretty close because we had to make some decisions regarding the building and how the building was functioning as an event space and also as an athletic space, and combining those two and making sure neither one of them was having too much time in a sense and taken away from the other. So it was a balancing act, and Joe was a great person to work with. He became Joe, never Mr. Etzel after that, and good man, very good man.
And you mentioned Clive Charles earlier. What are some things you remember about Clive?
Oh, Clive. Clive was just a good friend. We sat, I never forget this, we're in the dining room, the priest dining room over in the Commons. We're sitting at a table for lunch. Clive's at the table, myself, and probably Buzz, Pat Sweeney, maybe some others. And we're just talking about futures and so forth. And Clive had been there for a year. And he said, we're going to win the national championship. And people looked at him like, Clive, you've been here for a year, and our program is good, but it's not at that level. But we're going to be there. And I never forget him saying that. And then I think it was 7 years later, we started playing for the national championship. Didn't quite get there for a couple years in a row, but we started consistently playing for it. So when he got Tiffany to come Milbert on his team, who was being recruited by everybody in the nation, and she stayed here with him, that was a change, and that caused us to move forward. So he's a great man. He's also it's a fun guy to hang around with. I mean, he would tell a joke, do a prank, and loved laughing.
Another person who recently retired, Jim Sollers, longtime women's basketball coach, took the team to 4 straight NCAA tournaments back in the 90s.
He did.
What do you remember about Jim?
Well, Jim, my first memory of Jim was he was a history teacher, and that's how I first met him, through the whole process of being in charge of commencements, and Jim's needed to walk or something. I had to go get him some regalia. But then all of a sudden you find out that he's going to be the women's basketball coach. And I didn't realize you could do both. Jim did that for probably 6 or 7 years, which is a great commitment of time for him. He also had children at home. He also lived on a farm, and he's raising animals. And so Jim always been the one person I've looked at as time management. I learned from Jim how to manage your time outside of work, because Jim was able to do so many things. But he was also a great prankster. He and Clive would do things to certain people. I can't tell the stories over live TV, but they would do things, and they would tell certain people what happened, and then all of a sudden something would happen, and people would just be laughing, and some of the guy would be, "What the heck?" And it was fun. It really, really was fun. Watching those two together were a team, definitely a team.
And we have to talk about another Jim Kuffner.
Jimmy Kuffner, yeah.
Also retired recently, but you guys started...
Jim and I started the same day.
Okay, so he was a longtime employee at UP. Still has a lot to do with the university.
Jim has not really left the university. He just doesn't show up every day.
Right.
But the land behind us right now, Jim is the one who sort of becomes a matron for that whole area down there. And he sort of makes sure that we as a university are guided through the matrix of all the different agencies we have to talk to. Jim has become, again, another very good friend. Spent a lot of time with Jim. His children, he's now, I think he's in 6th or 7th through school here. Get to know them each individually. His lovely wife, Kathy. We would do tests together, and we worked many, many times on Saturday mornings together. So great family. They live right down the street. It was interesting. He's HR at the time. He comes in. I'm coming in for the first time. Now when you join the university, you go through, HR brings you in. They give you a whole series of things you should do and not do and so forth. We just started. They handed us keys. You're started. That's it. Move on. Simple.
And you mentioned the River Campus behind us.
Yeah.
You might be leaving, but UP goes on.
It goes on.
Future is bright. What are you excited about the future here at UP?
Well, I'm excited about, we're one of few universities, none that I really know, there has to be one or two, that near their footprint of their original campus, they have another plus 30 acres that now all of a sudden becomes theirs. We have been given a wonderful gift by Bob Franz and his lovely sister, Elsie, to continue working down below and adding the things that needed to be added. So a boathouse, a physical plant, a couple soccer fields, maybe some track field at some time. We can grow right next to the university. Few places can do that. And then up above here, the Dundon-Birkdale building going in, all of a sudden now we have 2 bookends of growth that are just so exciting. These next 5 years at the university are going to be very, very exciting. And I'm going to be watching from afar, but at the same time know some of the things that are going to happen and intrinsically be so excited, so excited.
Bill Reed, we still have plenty more to talk about.
Right.
Stick around for a few minutes?
Yeah, we're going to stick around as long as you want me.
All right, more Bill Reed coming up after the break. Bill Reed, so here we are in what is essentially the center of the athletic facilities here at the University of Portland. Chalice Center behind us, Merla Field, Joe Etzel Field. Probably looks a little different now than it did back when you were a student.
Oh, much different now. This was just a flat field all the way to the main parking lot on both sides. The baseball stadium didn't exist. We basically played intramurals behind me. We had huge intramural games over here. So yes, changed tremendously over the years, in a positive way. And so
we were talking earlier, baseball field, before you got here, it used to be located somewhere over in the quad.
Yep.
Baseball field moved I think it was
Right
here
behind us.
briefly,
Yeah,
and then
right
when you
behind
were
us.
here, it was over here known as Farley Field.
Farley Field.
Did you go to some of the games over there?
We will go to games over there. We're able to sit anywhere we want except on the field, and get up real close. And you don't want to get up too close because the ball does come off the bat. But we will go to games, and they put some seats in a small little portable thing. But we just sat in the grass, threw a blanket down, and we'd sit around. It was great.
And it seems like Merla Field, Chalice Center, and Joseph Field all kind of came to be
Kind
during a
of.
few short years together. Talk about this, you and Joe Etzel back then, and watching Joe go through the process of get these facilities
Joe
built.
basically, the baseball stadium as we have now, basically Joe built that with his family and friends and his children. It was always a treat after a baseball game. Joe would always have to have his team and family go out and prep the field and put the field to bed after the game. They would show up sometimes on Saturdays when there was no game and do something on the field. So it was an Etzel family process, not just Joe himself. And then Merlo Field, when they first built Merlo Field, we didn't have any grandstands. So people just walked in, and first couple of games, I don't even think we had portable seats yet. Portable seats finally came in, and Joe was so excited about the portable seats. I remember the day that we had North Carolina come and play us, and Joe and I were up on the very top of the grandstand right next to the press box, and people just kept coming in, and Joe could see from way far away, like the Field of Dreams, or just driving in. and Joe's looking and going, we're saying, Joe, somewhere along the way, we got to close the gate. Well, Bill, a couple more. And a couple more became hundreds, and they were ringing the field, standing, sitting. It was a great experience. We played well for about the first 10, 15 minutes, and then our talent and their talent were different, and they took charge, but it was a great game.
Nice.
Great game. Great game.
Well, let's go for a walk.
Okay, wander over.
Here we are in another part of campus that has probably undergone some changes since you first came here. Prue Pitch, the grass soccer practice field, and this is where the old soccer field used to be with the track around it, right?
Right. This is where we had the NCAA first game against Stanford here, and they put up a snow fence all the way around with probably 2 entrances, and Stanford shows up, and they're used to probably a little bit more than a couple snow fences, and we beat them, which was a great victory for us. And that was Clyde's first NCAA game, and of many to come, many, many.
So now Prue Pitch, been here for about 10 years, named after Father Pruszinski, who was a close friend of yours, along with another father, Father Barr. Talk about Father Prue and Father Barr and what they meant to you.
Well, Father Prue was my rector when I lived over in Shipstead, and he was a young priest at that time, and in accounting, and he knew almost everybody in the accounting field. I was in education, but just got to know him over the years, over the months, because after about 6 months in as a student, there was an opening for an RA, and he came and asked me, I guess I had impressed him, he came and asked me if I wanted to be an RA. And I said, yeah. He said, well, come on by for an interview. So I went to his place, had an interview, we sat down, and we talked for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And he said, you got the job, here's the master key. Now they have to go through like weeks and weeks and weeks of processing, making sure you write a resume, letters of recommendation. 10 minutes and I was an RA, basically.
All right, Bill, next stop is Shipstead Hall, where it all started. All right, Bill Reed, here we are at Shipstead Hall, which was the new dorm when you were here. Has it changed much through the years?
No, it really hasn't changed at all. I mean, it's still the dorm. I go in and look at my room. Still exactly, I shouldn't say exactly. They have changed the carpet and they moved a couple things around, but pretty much the 4 walls are still where they were. The door is still where it was. It's still the same place. It's a great dorm. It was a great dorm.
And this could be considered where it all began for you.
It is.
And now it's coming to an end. Any final thoughts as you head off into the sunset?
Well, I just want to thank the university, because the reason I am here is because of the patience that many, many people on this campus had with me. Allowed me to grow and become who I am today. You must realize that, becoming the events director for the University of Portland, my only resume basically that could be supportive of that was I taught 7th and 8th grade for 10 years. And so as managing classroom management skills, dealing with 7th and 8th grade boys and girls, really gave me the opportunity of taking those skills and laying them here. Now, many, many more skills had to be honed and built and so forth than I did over the years. But the patience of the university to stay with me allowed me to excel as much as I think I have excelled here. And I really believe the university's moved forward a little bit with me at the helm, but not a lot, but just a little bit.
Bill Reed, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining
You're
us.
welcome. You're welcome.
Good luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. Enjoy your day, and hopefully we'll go Pilots.